Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, I'm very pleased to be invited to contribute to the session on Austrian economics and to talk on, as it was a suggestion, to talk on Schumpeter, since I'm teaching and doing research on Schumpeter since many years. And I have the idea, talking on Schumpeter, especially in Austria, falls on a flourishing ground. Why is it? Because regarding sports, Austrian public loves skiing. Regarding social sciences, Austria loves Schumpeter. So Schumpeter is a kind of intellectual hero for Austrians. There is an international there is an Austrian Joseph Schumpeter Society. There are many local societies at Graz, at Vienna, at different other places. So Schumpeter is, although he emigrated in the late 20s to the US and never came back to Austria, he's still regarded as one of the big sons of this country. However, it is not only a revival of Schumpeter in Austria, there's also created in the 80s an International Joseph Schumpeter Society, which has huge international conferences every 2 years all over the world. Last year I was invited to a conference here at Vienna, just dedicated to the 100th birthday of the theory of economic development. So there is very much going on concerning Schumpeter. However, as I have read somewhere, Schumpeter is not really regarded as a foot soldier of Austrian economics. However, if not, what is Austrian economics at all? We have discussed it earlier this morning in relation to the talk of Professor Nick. I mean, frequently we use the term Austrian economics. Is someone in Austrian economics who holds an Austrian passport, who is born in Austria? What is the concrete definition? It is difficult to define, and still a great task to come over with a precise definition. I mean, I'm teaching on Austrian ground for about 15 years now at different places, different universities here at Vienna, now at Klagenfurt. When I'm asking the question to my students, have you ever heard about Austrian economics? They are astonished. No, what is that? I've never heard something on that. And in contrast to that, there's an still ongoing debate in the US. You have the review of Austrian economics, you have a number of further established academic journals. It has a GL code, Austrian economics, so you can, even all the big guys from Chicago University Department of Economics, everybody knows this Austrian economics. In Austria, it is more or less silent on that. That is a very interesting debate. My presentation likes to concentrate in the same way as Carl Milford before on methodological aspects in the work of Schumpeter. I mean, I have a paper, but I have not the time to read carefully through the paper. So that is the structure of the paper, and I just make it very briefly. I don't want to talk about Schumpeter as a theorist of entrepreneurship and innovation, although that is the most clear association with the work of Schumpeter, but I like to talk more on Schumpeter as a theorist of science and some further conclusions. And just to underline that it is still not silent but loud on Schumpeter, you see a collection of recent book titles with the best international publishing houses: Cambridge University Press, Harvard University Press, Princeton University Press, and many others. So there's still a lot of ongoing research on Schumpeter. Here's a German one, Professor Heinz Kurz. He's the head of a research unit at Graz University, published in 2005. Since then, he has 2 or 3 further books on Schumpeter. So I just like to say he's still an object of research and further interest. Let me start with 4 theses. Firstly, from today's point, Schumpeter is a truly interdisciplinary theorist. His work must be characterized as academic cross-fertilization. Therefore, posthumously, Schumpeter's different articles were sorted into books as collected papers in sociology, political speeches, articles in socioeconomics, each one is an independent book, papers on economic policies, 1985, essays on daily politics, papers on economic theory, and articles on the history of economic thought. In the first instance, many contemporaries know Schumpeter's ideas as they were developed in Theory of Economic Development, published 1911 or 1912, depending on answers in a long-lasting controversy. Perhaps also his book on business cycles from the 30s, and of course his argumentation in Capitalism, Socialism, and Democracy, 1942. But less known is his systematization of academic development and his methodological roadmap. So that is the slit through which I would look at Schumpeter, his methodology. Thirdly, let me focus on the principles of Schumpeter's academic thought, which led him to create his diverse works and which were reflected systematically in some of his writings, where Schumpeter emerged as a theorist of science. Besides working on specific substantial topics, throughout his life, Schumpeter dealt with methodological issues in different works. He wrote on rationality, on positivism in economics, on mathematical methods in economic theorizing, already 1906, how to study social sciences, 1915, Gustav Schmoller und die Probleme von heute, 1927, even this paper has 60, 70 pages, and many articles more. Referring to books, his 1908 book, Das Wesen der Dogmen- und Methodengeschichte, started with methodological reflections. One of the chapters was entitled Methodological Individualism, and his book Epochen der Dogmen- und Methodengeschichte, 1912, published in English as Economic Doctrines and Method in 1945, was certainly a major contribution to methodology in economics. Despite these many different works, I view Schumpeter's History of Economic Analysis as one study among his diverse works, which proves to show not only his latest, but also his most up-to-date statement concerning the division of social sciences and the role of economics in relation to sociology, history, and some other branches like philosophy, psychology, political economy, and many more. Next thesis. Reading the substantial preface of the History of Economic Analysis. I mean, the book was published in 1954, 4 years after Schumpeter died. It was in 1950 when he died. So the book has nearly 900 pages. But the preface has, just the preface has already 60 or 70 pages. And I'm just referring to this preface. This reads as having a manual on how to refer to different academic branches and how to integrate them into a coherent, universal social science, which is far away from being an autistic, narrow economic science of some modern representation. There's evidence that Schumpeter must be regarded as someone who stays on the solid ground of a well-studied history of mainstream economics. This leads him to argue offensively for an institutional approach integrating economics with different further social sciences by avoiding the formulation of a divisional order or ranking. He always talks about a box of tools. So he's driven by the aim. Economics belongs to this box of tools. Finally, my last thesis. Of course, Schumpeter's history of economic analysis has been extensively printed, translated, and reprinted in several editions. However, I have the idea that especially the preface shows to be somehow neglected in Schumpeterian discourse, and that his argumentation needs so much more text marking because it has to be read as a fine synthesis of arguments as developed in the first battle of methods between Karl Menger and Gustav Schmoller, and the second battle of methods between Schmoller and Max Weber and others. Over the time span of 50 or 70 years between the old controversies and history of economic analysis, we see that many questions have come onto the agenda in a more elegant and rigorous way. While Schumpeter is mostly regarded as a pioneer of evolutionary economics, and of course of entrepreneurship and innovation, and the theory of economic development, and especially capitalism, socialism, and democracy, the last one containing the famous formulation of creative destruction, I see Schumpeter also as a well-reasoning institutionalist who proved to be aware of all methodological debate and who synthesized and offered own elaborated positions which still have very much to offer in my view. What I like to refer you, or I would like to refer you to just two single topics within this preface to the history of economic theory. I mean, I could also discuss something which Professor Milford has mentioned on methodological individualism, but I have not the time left. I would just like to mention 2 points which are underlined very systematically by Schumpeter. First, you have to invest as an economist or as a member of any other academic science, medicine, biology, whatever, you have to refer to the history of your own subject. Firstly. Secondly, you have to treat your subject as one tool among others, and you have to analyze this box of tools, asking how can each subject contribute to each other in order to find a more appropriate solution and insight of matters. So, I mean, and in the end, that now I come already with my final message, before going into detail, we see that the relationship between, as Schumpeter says, pure economics and sociology, psychology, philosophy, history, and logic is organized in the work of Schumpeter in a much more interesting way, as many others since then, and also contemporaries, treat this. So, for example, Schumpeter proves to be this way a theorist of interdisciplinary studies, some way. So, just to go to the first of these 2 points. It is already the question of Schumpeter. Why do we have to study the history of economics? And he says we have to acknowledge 4 different reasons. First, there is a lack of direction and meaning without historical context. So you can't start learning, for example, medicine if you don't know the history of medicine. You can't start doing economics if you're not aware of the history of economics. And the argumentation comes further in detail. Second, we learn to understand why we are as far as we actually are, and also why we are not further. And we learn what succeeds and how and why. So, to make it short, the history of a science is a source of new inspirations, and it is driven from the study of the history of science. Thirdly, the history of economics provides benefits for the history of any other science or of science in general. It teaches us much about the ways of the human mind. To quote Schumpeter directly, it is a sort of pragmatic or descriptive logic, maybe extracted from observation and formulation of scientific procedures, which of course involve or merge into the study of the history of sciences. And the last point, it stands to reason that the preceding arguments, at least the ones that have been presented under the first 2 headings, apply with added force to the special case of economics. To a large extent, the economics of different epochs deal with different sets of facts and problems. To conclude, the history of a science is or has to be treated as a history of the overcoming of errors. So scientific progress is an overcoming of former ways to think about matters. And we don't know this history of error, we have no aim where to go. And we need this history of error to find a way of direction. That is a form of argumentation in favor of a history of economic thought. So if we do not know where we are coming from, how shall we go? How shall we know where to go? And then we have a substantial, okay, I try to summarize. I mean, it's always the same situation that the last papers run short of time because, I mean, that's a lesson I got quite early in my career. So just to skip it, I mean, I just would like to underline another thematical point, which is the order of sciences. I mean, Schumpeter is regarded as one of the best known economists of the 20th century, independently how you would like to rank him against Keynes, against Samuelson, against others, Hayek or whomever, but he's really a big name, and it is surprisingly that he really is in some way distant to his own subject. He has a chapter or a subchapter in this preface talking firstly about is economics a science, and then he's talking about the techniques of economic analysis. And you see here 6 different fields, and somewhere else he has further fields like philosophy and also psychology, but not mentioned here, economic history, statistics, theory, economic sociology, and political sociology, and further applied fields. All these subfields are regarded and discussed in Schumpeter as techniques of economic analysis. And having more time, and you can read it in my paper later on, you see how he argues, or the way in which he argues that each of these academic branches is contributing to economic analysis. And the interesting thing is, he talks about theory always in quotation marks. So, so in a way, as we not really know or never know what is theory at all. And it's a very interesting thing because it is so up to date. I know a colleague at Klagenfurt from a different department who has written an own book entitled "What is Theory?" I mean, it's a long story, and when does a statement get the status of being coined theory? So, so history matters, of course. He says, without history, we don't have, without historical facts, we have no understanding what we are talking about. And that is the same as maybe at the beginning of the 90s, Douglas North, who got the Nobel Prize in '92 on his institutional economics. He wrote exactly on the same ground, arguing if we do not know something about history, we have no empirical data. So the history is the own, as North says, laboratory for academic science at all, which provides data. We need, even for doing future research, we need historical research. So history matters. Then he is talking about theory. I said it already. Theory is reserved to the semantic of general economics. Economic sociology, he says, it deals with the question how people came to behave as they do. And it is not only a question of motives, but also a question of motives, of propensities and social institutions. And he talks about economic sociology, very respectful as a fundamental field in which economists nor sociologists can get very far without treating on one another's toes. And he's talking about statistics and mathematics as necessary because they provide empirical data to furnish and provide real economies. And finally, economic psychology. Psychology is really the basis from which any social science must start and in terms of which all fundamental explanation must run. I mean, in '73, Simon got, as a psychologist, got a Nobel Prize in economics, talking about bounded rationality, just last 2 minutes. And I just wrote a paper on Simon, and you see the lack of those programmatic formulations already delivered by Schumpeter at the beginning of the 50s. All other psychologists who won Nobel Prizes in economics, like Simon, Kahneman, and others, should respect already these programmatic formulations. My conclusion is reading Schumpeter is an appropriate tool for finding a way back and for shedding light on contemporary questions. So that fits very much together, very well together, with recent discussion on the need of interdisciplinary thought. And so far, I see Schumpeter as a really, not as a person of the history of economics, but as a real up-to-date author providing perspective, suggestions grounded on differentiated methodological reflection. Thank you very much for your patience.